During the last generation, far too many great franchises were shelved. Prince of Persia, Resistance, Splinter Cell, Burnout, Sly Cooper, SSX, the list just goes on and on. However, the absence that bothered me the most personally was Ninja Gaiden. The Ninja Gaiden series has a long, storied history dating back to the NES era. But for me and many others, the series will always be synonymous with the Team Ninja reboot series of the 2000s, which reimagined the franchise in the form of tough-as-nails character action games. I've always loved character action games, be it Devil May Cry, Metal Gear Rising, or Bayonetta, but my favourite of the bunch was always Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden Black and Ninja Gaiden 2 in particular are two of my favourite action games ever, and they were both very formative experiences in the development of my gaming tastes. But the Ninja Gaiden series had a spectacular fall from grace. First with 2012's ill-received Ninja Gaiden 3, which granted was drastically improved through its revised version, Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, and then with the abysmal 2014 spin-off, Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. After the release of which, the Ninja Gaiden series was completely put on ice, remaining shelved for the past decade. So I've been waiting a very long time for Tecmo Koei to breathe new life into the series, and now it's finally happening, and in a far grander way than I could have ever hoped, as 2025 is set to see the release of not one, not two, but 3 Ninja Gaiden games. The Ninja Gaiden renaissance first began at the Game Awards in December, with the announcement of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, a new smaller-scale Ninja Gaiden game from the Game Kitchen, the studio responsible for the acclaimed Blasphemous games, which is set to take the Ninja Gaiden series back to its side-scrolling roots for the first time in 30 years. And after waiting this long for any new Ninja Gaiden project, I was thrilled with this alone. So you can imagine how ecstatic I was when during Xbox's Developer Direct the following month, Koei Tecmo dropped the bombshell announcement that the mainline series was also continuing onwards with Ninja Gaiden 4, a collaborative effort between Team Ninja and Platinum Games. But Ninja Gaiden 4's reveal was capped off with a perfect little cherry on top, with the announcement and shadow drop of a newly reworked and remastered version of Ninja Gaiden 2, aptly titled Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is a timely reminder of what we were missing out on during this franchise's absence, as 17 years after its original release, Ninja Gaiden 2 has aged beautifully, still offering one of the most varied and flexible combat systems of any character action game. And the new coat of paint Team Ninja has applied with the new Unreal Engine 5 visuals allows Ninja Gaiden 2's spectacular character designs and varied environments to shine brighter than ever before. While a few omissions prevent Ninja Gaiden 2 Black from being the complete definitive package that it should be, this is still the best way to experience one of the most rewarding action games ever made. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is far from the first revised version of Ninja Gaiden 2 we've received. In fact, it's the 4th version of Ninja Gaiden 2, all of which I've played. So as you can probably tell, this is a game I love and am down to replay over and over again. First we got the original version of Ninja Gaiden 2 on the 360 in 2008. The next year we got the reworked PS3 version, Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, which offered a bunch of new content, but unfortunately also scaled back the difficulty and drastically toned down the violence and gore. Then in 2013 we got Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 Plus, a port of Sigma 2 for my beloved PlayStation Vita, that re-implemented the gore but halved the frame rate from 60 to 30 FPS, and also brought with it some pretty nasty performance issues during the more taxing points of the game. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black aims to be the definitive version of Ninja Gaiden 2. Under the hood, Black 2 is built upon the bones of Sigma 2, as Team Ninja long ago lost the source code for the original 360 version of Ninja Gaiden 2. This means Black 2 includes the additional stages of Sigma 2 where you play as Ayane, Rachel and Momiji, though they've also re-implemented all the dismemberment, decapitations and gore of the original version of Ninja Gaiden 2, all while maintaining a 60 FPS frame rate and even offering an optional 120 FPS mode with dynamic resolution. Though I will say, I mostly kept the game locked at 4K 60, as I always find the changing resolutions distracting when you're playing at 120 FPS. I often start my reviews talking about the story of a game, because it's an essential part of most modern gaming experiences. But while I love Ninja Gaiden to bits, let's just say that story has never been the franchise's forte. The stories are usually silly, melodramatic, and forgettable, and that's undeniably true of Ninja Gaiden 2. Picking up a year after the events of Ninja Gaiden Black, Ninja Gaiden 2 begins in modern-day Tokyo as legendary swordsmith Muramasa is setting up his shop, when a CIA operative named Sonya shows up in search of Ryu Hayabusa. But as she questions Muramasa, ninjas from the sinister Black Spider Clan storm his store and kidnap Sonya, at which point Ryu bursts onto the scene in pursuit, rescuing Sonya, who tells him that the Black Spider Clan intend to launch a raid on Hayabusa village to steal the demon statue Ryu's clan has been entrusted to protect, as they intend to use it to resurrect an ancient evil being known as the Archfiend. It's a schlocky, contrived premise that serves only to send Ryu from place to place so he can dispatch waves of enemies on different continents across the globe. Thankfully, Ninja Gaiden 2 is aware of the inherent silliness of its premise and leans into it. This is a game filled with goofy one-liners, as Ryu mutters things like, "Such is the fragility of evil," after felling a boss, and campy villains played by actors who are massively hamming it up, and evidently having a great time delivering the cartoonish dialogue. But what it lacks in quality writing, Ninja Gaiden makes up for in iconic characters. Ryu may have little in the way of personality, but he certainly has all the aura. This is a character that exudes coolness, as do supporting characters like Ayane and Momiji. While its story is far from great, that ultimately doesn't matter at all, as Ninja Gaiden is not a series you're coming to for its story. If you're playing a character action game, you're there for the fast, frenetic combat, and that's something Ninja Gaiden delivers better than just about any other franchise, as Ninja Gaiden 2 has one of the most perfectly executed combat systems to ever grace an action game. Ninja Gaiden 2's gameplay remains largely intact here, with no major changes. But that's a good thing, as Ninja Gaiden 2 has held the test of time and plays as wonderfully in 2025 as it did in 2008, so there's no need to fix what wasn't broken. The main reason Ninja Gaiden 2's combat has held up so well is the variety and flexibility offered by the abundance of weapons you can wield in Ninja Gaiden 2. You're practically spoilt for choice. There's the classic Dragon Sword Katana, the Vigorian Flail, the Enma's Fang Greatsword, the Lunar Staff, the Falcon's Talons Claws, the Eclipse Scythe. The list just goes on, and the best part is that they're all valid options. There's not one set meta weapon that you have to stick to succeed. Ninja Gaiden 2's weapons are masterfully balanced in a way that you rarely see in action games. Every weapon here can be used effectively. While I like mixing it up from time to time, I do find myself largely sticking to 3 weapons. The standard katana, as it's simply the most well-rounded weapon in the game, the lightning-fast claws, as I love how quickly you can dispatch a crowd of fodder enemies with them, and the greatsword, because even though it's slow, it deals such an absurd amount of damage, and can shred through most bosses' health bars within a handful of combos. With a myriad of weapons on offer, Ninja Gaiden 2 has a near endless amount of interesting combos to explore and memorise, though I'll always have a special soft spot for Ryu's Izuna drop technique, where he launches an enemy into the air, then juggles them for a moment, before grabbing hold of them and sending them slamming into the floor in a vicious spinning nosedive. This is still one of the most fun moves to use in any action game. I don't know how the physics of this attack work, or why this technique has become a trope in all media featuring ninjas, but I'm certainly not going to question it, because when something is this cool, it doesn't need to make sense. Each of Ryu's melee weapons can also be upgraded to 3 different tiers, and they don't just receive stat buffs, but also undergo aesthetic makeovers as they're upgraded. Once upgraded to level 3, the claws become these gigantic golden talons, and the greatsword turns into a massive serrated red blade. Ryu also has a couple of ranged weapons as well. There's the bow and arrow that can be used to take out archers who rain down arrows from rooftops, and shuriken, which essentially work like Bayonetta or Dante's guns, allowing you to keep your combos going as you close the distance between Ryu and his enemy, and keep pressure on enemies to prevent them from attacking you. Unfortunately, as Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is built atop the framework of Sigma 2, this does mean that it's still missing the additional ranged weapons of the 360 version, the Incendiary Shuriken and Windmill Shuriken. While these weapons don't actively change the gameplay in any meaningful way, if Team Ninja truly wanted this to be the definitive version of Ninja Gaiden 2, it would have been nice to see these long absent weapons reintroduced. And there are a couple of other bits and pieces missing in Ninja Gaiden 2 Black that prevent it from being the definitive all-in-one package it probably should have been. There are missing costumes, the survival mode that was added to the 360 version as DLC isn't here, a couple of the bonus bosses from Sigma 2 are missing, and most egregiously, there's still no New Game Plus, which drives me insane. It's ridiculous that New Game Plus has been absent in every version of Ninja Gaiden 2 after the original 360 release. This doesn't feel like it should be too big of an ask to implement, and at this point, New Game Plus is an expectation in games like Ninja Gaiden, which are evidently designed with replayability in mind. One big change from the original version of Ninja Gaiden 2 in Sigma was a decrease in the number of enemies you'd be taking on at any given time. The decreased enemy density made Sigma 2 far easier than the original version of Ninja Gaiden 2, as the game includes certain techniques specifically to help you contend with these large groups, and they feel massively overpowered when you're using them on groups of 4 or 5 enemies. Team Ninja has added some additional enemies into certain fights in Black 2, but you'll never have to contend with huge groups of enemies like you would in the 360 version of Ninja Gaiden 2. While this isn't the end of the world, and certainly doesn't ruin the experience by any means, it has long been a hang-up for Ninja Gaiden 2 purists. However, it's a compromise I'm ultimately okay with when we're getting a game that offers all the perks of Sigma without its worst shortcomings. As I mentioned in the top, Black 2 restores the exaggerated gore of the original Ninja Gaiden 2. As Ryu hacks his way through enemies, arms, legs and heads are flying everywhere as ribbons of blood spiral through the air. But Ninja Gaiden 2 is the rare game where the over-the-top gore isn't just there to add stylistic flair to fights, it also has important gameplay implications, as if you take off an enemy's limb, they'll be put in a severely weakened state where they can be finished off with a grisly finishing move. But while they're in this weakened state, they can be even more dangerous than before, because they might attempt a suicide attack where they latch onto Ryu and blow themselves up. So you want to get enemies who have been dismembered out of the way as quickly as possible. These finishing animations are so damn cool, and I love the absurd touch of letting you perform a finisher on an already decapitated enemy to really add insult to injury. Outside of the plethora of weapons on show, another way Ninja Gaiden 2 keeps fights feeling fresh throughout is through its creative and massively varied assortment of enemies. From plain old ninjas, to skeletal scorpions, to werewolves, to demons, to giant bugs, Ryu slays all manner of foes throughout Ninja Gaiden 2. While most of these standard enemies provide fun fights, one area where Ninja Gaiden 2 has always fallen a little short for me is in its boss fights. Though to be honest, I've always found the boss fights to be the weakest aspect of Team Ninja's Ninja Gaiden games. While a handful are pretty good and a few are absolute stinkers, the vast majority are just uninspired and forgettable. And so many of the boss fights here are comically easy to cheese your way through. I think of bosses like the Fire Armadillo, who you can just stand behind and wail on endlessly without taking a hit, and the Water Dragon, who you can spam arrows at until he's dead, without ever having to get anywhere near him. It's also worth noting that while Ninja Gaiden Black 2 is nearly identical to Sigma 2 content-wise, Team Ninja actually removed a handful of Sigma 2's additional bosses in Black, most notably taking out the giant Buddha statue and Statue of Liberty boss fights, which I've gotta say is the rare example of cut content that doesn't bother me. These were boring slogs of fights, and their removal here actually improves the pacing and makes the game flow better. When fans talk about Ninja Gaiden, we naturally gravitate to talking about its combat, and for good reason. It's stellar, and it's why we play these games. But it does mean that the series' traversal mechanics don't always get the love they deserve. Ninja Gaiden 2 feels almost as good outside of combat when you're just making your way through the world as it does when you're tearing a swarm of demons limb from limb. Ninja Gaiden 2 is full of fun platforming segments that serve as palate cleansers to break up the fights. Ryu moves with all the agility and acrobatics that you want when playing as a ninja. He can wall run, wall jump, swing between beams, and even sprint across water. And it's important to keep all these skills in mind when wandering across Ninja Gaiden 2's world, because there are scores of hidden areas tucked away that you'll want to look out for, as they often contain items that upgrade Ryu's health and magic. While the movement feels rock solid, Ninja Gaiden 2 is a 17-year-old game, and even in this remaster, its traversal isn't without issues. Swimming still feels god-awful here. The underwater controls are ridiculously cumbersome, and the camera can be very wonky at points, making sections that require precision platforming frustrating. This is particularly egregious underwater and whenever you're in confined spaces. There's a section a little over halfway through Ninja Gaiden 2 where you have to platform your way up the cogs of a clock tower, and it's easily the worst part of the entire game, as the camera is constantly getting snagged on the geometry of the environment, making it impossible to see where you're jumping to half the time. This has always been a problem in the Ninja Gaiden games, and it was something I had hoped Team Ninja would have finally addressed in this remaster, but the camera issues are still as prevalent as ever here. Also, a weird little nitpick, but it's always bothered me that Ninja Gaiden 2's first few stages are littered with tutorial scrolls to teach you the mechanics of the game, but you normally find them after you would have already had to figure out the mechanic for yourself. Why would you tell players how to attack after they've taken out the first group of enemies in the game? Such a weird design choice. The Ninja Gaiden games are known for being punishing, but as I mentioned earlier, Sigma 2 and in turn 2 Black are both far easier than the original release of Ninja Gaiden 2, which itself was leagues easier than Ninja Gaiden Black, which is brutally challenging at points. I breezed through Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, dying only 1 or 2 times. A large part of this is because I've played Ninja Gaiden 2 several times before, and am intimately familiar with its mechanics, but also because this kind of game has just always clicked with me. I guess every gamer has their strengths and weaknesses. I can't play a racing sim to save my life, but throw me into a character action game or Souls-like, and I'm tearing shit up. One of the most controversial additions to Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 with the Sigma duology was the additional missions that saw you playing as characters other than Ryu Hayabusa. Some liked the variety they offer, while others felt like they were shoehorned in and disrupt the pacing of the stories. And while I do feel like that's true in the original Sigma, I quite like the additional missions in Sigma 2 and the change of pace they provide. It's not like they're an overbearing addition, there are only 3 of these additional missions, and they don't overstay their welcome as they're all quite short. 2 of the 3 characters that star in these missions, Ayane and Rachel, will be instantly familiar to all Ninja Gaiden fans, as both were featured in the first Team Ninja Gaiden game, then made playable in Sigma. Though of course Ayane also has her own separate history as she originates from the Dead or Alive series. However, the third playable character, Momiji, is more of a strange pull, as she was introduced in the obscure, often forgotten DS Ninja Gaiden game, Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, which of course came from the era of DS games, where every series had to find a subtitle that could be abbreviated to DS, like Advance Wars Dual Strike, Resident Evil Deadly Silence, Full Metal Alchemist Dual Sympathy, Peggle Dual Shot, SMT Devil Survivor. Seriously, there were a comical amount of publishers that felt compelled to use this naming convention. Ayane, Rachel and Momiji each have distinct weapons and playstyles. Ayane fights with dual swords and can fling explosive kunai, Rachel wields a hammer and a machine gun, and Momiji takes down enemies with a polearm and bow. For characters who are only utilised in a very small portion of the game, all 3 are fun to play as, thanks to their surprisingly thought out movesets and arsenals. I want to commend Ninja Gaiden 2 for its almost perfect runtime. It takes about 8 to 9 hours to finish Ninja Gaiden 2, which feels like the perfect sweet spot for a character action game. It's not too short, but it's also in that nice range where you're down to replay it from time to time. There are 100-hour-long RPGs that I adore, but will likely never play again because of how much of a time commitment they are. But I'll be replaying the first 2 Ninja Gaiden games every couple of years for the rest of my life. While Ninja Gaiden 2 is largely well paced, I will say the final couple of chapters are its weakest portion, and they do drag a little. There are too many fights against generic monsters that just aren't as satisfying to fight as other enemies in the game, and this run of levels is also the least interesting stretch of the game visually. While there are some striking volcanic areas, you're also making your way through tons of boring caves that all look exactly the same. Of course, the most significant change to Ninja Gaiden 2 in Black is the completely overhauled visuals, which have been rebuilt from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is a great looking game. Team Ninja has done an incredible job bringing Ninja Gaiden 2 up to modern standards. It's awesome seeing all these familiar environments that I've fought my way through countless times looking so beautiful and clean here. Ninja Gaiden 2 is very much a globe-trotting adventure, and as a result, Ninja Gaiden 2 is able to offer a varied and memorable lineup of environments for Ryu to carve his way through. Be it rooftops of urban cities, traditional shinobi villages, sewers, volcanoes, catacombs, or forests. I've always loved the way the Ninja Gaiden series combines traditional Japanese locales and imagery with modern high-tech cities and gadgets. It gives the Ninja Gaiden games a unique flavour that makes them stand out from other action games, many of which are more fantasy-inspired. I'd also be remiss to not shout out the Ninja Gaiden series' fantastic character designs. I absolutely love the way everyone looks in these games. Look, ninjas are dope, we all know this, but Ryu is on another level. This is a character with a perfect design. The all-black suit with plates of silver armour to give it some accents of colour is so sleek. It's got enough detail to pop without looking over-designed and stupid. Seriously, some of Marvel and DC's costume designers need to take a look at Ryu for inspiration. I have heard that some players ran into performance issues with Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, but for me, it ran like a dream, and I had no technical hiccups whatsoever. But I thought I should mention this, as I might have gotten lucky, and your mileage may vary. But hey, you can only review a game based on your own experience, and mine was technically flawless. With Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, the series is back in all its gory glory. I cannot tell you how much I've missed this franchise, and how great it is to be back. While a few small missing features prevent Black 2 from being the all-in-one package I had hoped it would be, it's still a wonderful blending of Ninja Gaiden 2 and Sigma 2, giving us all the pros of the Sigma version without its major drawbacks. Ninja Gaiden 2 still has one of the slickest and most flexible combat systems you'll find in any action game. Its plethora of interesting locales you'll be butchering baddies in gives the game an excellent amount of visual variety, and the gorgeous new visuals bring Ninja Gaiden 2 up to modern standards and make it one of the prettiest action games on the market. With 3 Ninja Gaiden games in 2025, a reboot of Onimusha next year, and a new DMC animated series coming to Netflix imminently, it's a wonderful time to be a fan of the character action games of the 2000s. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can find plenty more videos on my channel, including my recent videos counting down my top 25 games of 2024, and my 25 most anticipated games of 2025. And be sure to stay tuned for my next video, where I'll be reviewing Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Till next time, be well guys.